Drag Queen Bible Story Hour. Churches are places where the faithful come to worship, where they have communion, confess their sins, and they draw near to God. But today, a lot of churches, mainline churches, have opened the doors to the cultural propaganda, progressive ideology, woke ideology. The church that's supposed to be pure bride of Jesus Christ is becoming almost like that harlot in the book of Revelation 17 verse 1 that rides the beast. It rides the culture. It conforms to the culture. So United Methodist in St. Petersburg, Florida recently hosted a children's sermon with a drag queen who is also a certified candidate for ordination. You gotta be kidding me. It's for children. So this is not talking about just adults. This is for children's service, and drag queen is a certified candidate for ordination. Isaac Simmons, bejeweled as Miss Pentecost in high split sequin dress, addressed children during worship at Ellendale United Methodist Church on October 2nd, 2022. Simmons' sermon included denouncement of capitalism, embrace of liberation theology, and a demand that doctrine should be overruled in a favor indiscriminate affirmation equated with God's holy wisdom. Isaac Simmons says, "We, members of United Methodist Church, any church or just the common humanity, we have a privilege and a duty to change the very doctrine and systems of oppression which surround us." Simmons preached, "The time of change-making will most likely be uncomfortable for you, but just the last days of Christ's life were uncomfortable for him. The days which rest between now and the end of injustice will be uncomfortable for us all." How bizarre of linking Jesus' suffering and what he endured for humanity to the suffering that Christians will endure by going through uncomfortable things, watching a man that's dressed like a woman doing a strip dance at the church in front of children. Of course, San Francisco is not a stranger to strange things. San Francisco Church hosts its first ever Drag Queen Bible Story Hour. Again, it's also aimed at the children. People came to Calvary Presbyterian Church in San Francisco Sunday for a Drag Queen Bible Story Hour. Organizers were hoping to provide a different perspective after some of the pushback that has occurred around the country around drag performances. Reverend Victor Floyd said it was the first for the church. Now, this particular church actually already had Pride prayer service, but it wasn't enough. So now they have a Drag Queen Bible Story Hour. And this is what this pastor said: "We're hoping to offer a little balance to all of the hateful rhetoric that is out in the country, especially from churches and politicians who are using churches and using trans people and drag queens as their props." So the pastor has a Pride rally before the month of June, and that's not enough, of course. Let's also bring a drag queen, because drag queens, of course, are not being very much accepted by the culture, and the woke progressive agenda seems to be causing a lot of backlash for companies who are thinking that if we just put the rainbow and if we just push this agenda on our customers through the items that we sell, then everybody's going to really just buy our stuff. And it turns out it's attacking Disney, Budweiser, Target, and so many more stores and companies are, once they go woke, they're beginning to go broke. Now, what is a drag queen? The term originated as British theater slang in the 19th century, and it was used to describe women's clothing worn by men. The drag is an acronym for dressed resembling a girl. Drag, D-R-A-G. Dressed resembling a girl. A drag queen is an entertainer who adapts an exaggerated feminine persona, typically for the purpose of performing in drag shows and other forms of entertainment. Drag queens are primarily associated with LGBTQ plus community and have played a significant role in LGBTQ plus culture throughout the history. Drag queens often dressed in flamboyant and glamorous clothing, including elaborate costumes, wigs, and makeup, and create larger-than-life female persona. According to CNN, Joe Jeffries said, "Drag is the theatrical exaggeration of gender." And he pretty much noted that what people think they know about gender, meaning the idea is to pretty much undermine what people think they know about gender. The idea is the man dresses like a woman, and it's a theatrical exaggeration of gender. The drag is really an evangelistic tool for the LGBT community. Drag queens are the Billy Grahams of LGBT community. They are the ones that propagate and really are the face and speak for this community. They play a very important role in getting children to accept it as normal to take on different roles and dress up as different roles. Now, why is there a focus on children, churches, and libraries? Well, children who sit in a circle and hear a drag queen, teach something from a book are taught that LGBTQ is okay, even something honorable, and it should be imitated. So a drag queen reading, not just performing, but reading a book or reading the Bible to children in church or in the library communicates to children, this is okay. This is something to be celebrated. We used to celebrate firefighters, police officers, teachers, engineers, and now our heroes are entertainers, people in Hollywood, drag queens. And that's the idea, is to paint a new hero face for children. This is who you should aspire to be. This is normal. And you should seek to be this type of person. Now, the reason why churches and libraries are the focus of drag queen reading hours is because churches and libraries are symbols of civilization. By hosting a drag show there, you're showing that this is a normal part of a lifestyle in the community. And that's why to these performers, churches and libraries and any places where children gather for a reading hour are of crucial importance. Now, the enemy of God, Satan, wants to pollute everything and desecrate God's house and the minds of children. What must we do as Christians? Now, I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you probably are not going to a church that has a guest speaker, performer, a drag queen. And if you do, you should run from a church like that, like from a plague. The reason being is that church is no longer the bride of Christ. It's the harlot of Babylon. It has compromised its truth for tolerance and has exchanged biblical values for cultural trendy things which oppose the Bible, and in its core are defiance to God's order and God's commandments. The churches are called to walk in purity, in presence, in power, and in God's purpose. Let me say that again. The church is called to walk in God's purity. It's very important to understand that sexual purity is what church is supposed to be known by. The Bible says if we want to ascend the hill of God, in other words, if we want to be in God's presence, we got to have pure heart. The Bible makes it very clear that without holiness, no man can see God. The Bible makes it clear that if we want to see God, we have to have a pure heart and innocent hands. God values purity of the heart and of the mind. And churches are the places where purity is not only supposed to be taught, the purity is supposed to be practiced. The second thing that churches need to have is God's presence. Today, the churches who embrace the culture, they lose God's presence. They lose the fear of God. They lose the conviction of God. There's no more changes in people's lives. The presence of God brings the fullness of joy. We don't need entertainment if we have the presence of God. And the reason why all of these entertainers are coming into church, including perverted entertainers coming into church, is because when the church loses its purity, it loses God's presence. When Jesus comes in with his presence, people change. People change from dead to life. They change from darkness into light. They go from lost to being found. The presence of Jesus is really the most important thing in the church. And that's why the churches should seek to please Jesus, not the culture. Seek to please his spirit, not the spirit of our culture. The third thing that our churches should have, that young people need more than anything else, and that is the power of God. When the church has purity, I'm not talking about legalism, but God's holy standards, and the church has passion for God's presence, it's a matter of time when the power of Jesus will begin to rest on that church. Miracles, signs, and wonders, though we don't chase them, they begin to follow us. One of the greatest miracles that the power of God does is changing sinners into sons and saints. Like last Sunday, we had a guy who, first time I met him, he came as a girl. He transitioned from male gender to female gender, was in New Age, also in mysticism, and just really lost. This Sunday, he testified how he encountered the love of Jesus, the power of Jesus, and now transitioned back to his male gender as God created him. You could see joy beaming on his face. You know, we had a lady in our church now who was healed of paralysis, neck down. People who were delivered from demons. This happened just a few weeks ago. And so when the church gathers in purity, God's presence, God's power begins to show up. And kids, youth, when they encounter God's power, they're never the same. And the last thing the church must have, and that is purpose. Purpose, and that is that the church is supposed to equip its believers to be light and salt. That means that we're not supposed to fit into the culture. We're supposed to stand out. And the church is there to equip us to do that. The church isn't there to teach us how to cave into the demands, the bullying, and the pressure of this godless, perverted, sinful culture, but to stand out and to be like the 3 Hebrew boys and not bow to the idol of our culture. To be like Joseph, who said, I am not going to commit this adultery because I fear God. To teach our people. A lot of times the churches have become a destination for our people. And that's why we entertain our people, because we want to keep coming for more. And we want to give them this dopamine, this just experience. But people need more than an experience. Though I believe in experiencing, the Bible says, taste and see the Lord is good. But people need purpose. People need a cause. Jesus says, my spirit will come upon you. You will receive power, but that power is not for a show. That power is not to be powerful. It's to be purposeful. And so that's what the churches need today. We don't need drag queens. We don't need progressive agenda. We don't need woke preaching. We don't need social gospel. We need gospel of the kingdom that touches the social injustice in our lives and in our culture. We need the power of the Holy Spirit. Our pastors, we need to step up and not preach a TED Talk inspirational messages, but preach the good news of Jesus Christ. Address demons in our services, address holiness in our services, and pray as much as drag queens practice their performances. If they focus on their perversion and their performances, we should as much be passionate for prayer, the presence of God, the power of God. Because I believe that as the world is getting darker, and this darkness is invading mainline, spiritually dead, compromising, having a form of godliness, and denying its power, churches. The real church, the remnant, must rise up and not cave to the demands, the pressures, the threats, and the bullying of this culture. Does your church have drag queens, Bible hours? Do you go to a living church, a church that has the presence, the purity, the power, and God's purpose? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. As always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this with other people.